Here's a question. What if the Death Star had not been destroyed? How would the story have been altered? And what would have changed in the Star Wars galaxy? Well, that's what we're going to explore right now. The Rogue One crew, led by Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor, had successfully stolen the plans for the Death Star from the Imperial Vault located on Scarif, and those essential plans had made their way into the hands of the Rebel leadership. They had planned an attack, identified the exhaust port design floor, and launched fighters that they hoped would be able to hit their target and destroy the space station. But here's where the story diverges. As Luke Skywalker made his way down the trench on the Death Star, he was closely pursued by Darth Vader and his two wingmen. Vader impatiently waited for his weapon system to lock onto Luke's X-Wing, when out of nowhere came a shot that very nearly destroyed one of his flanking TIE fighters. Looking around, Vader saw an old, battered Corellian freighter flying towards the trench, the Millennium Falcon. Two wingmen peeled off to deal with the new threat as Vader continued after Luke. The panel of his TIE Advanced flashed green as his weapons system locked on, and Vader pulled the trigger, hitting one of the wings of Luke's X-Wing and sending him hurtling into the trench wall in a massive ball of flames. As Vader pulled up out of the trench, he saw a TIE fighter squadron attacking the fleeing freighter, and finally wearing down its shields, tearing it apart with a laser cannon fire. The Death Star was safe. After taking down the straggling few Rebellion fighters, Vader and the TIE squadrons returned to their hangars, and Grand Moff Tarkin, now having a clear shot at the Yavin base, ordered the space station's primary weapon to be fired. In one gigantic fireball, the Yavin moon was destroyed, and with it a large portion of the Rebel leadership. Princess Leia Organa, General John Dodonna, and General Hera Syndulla were all crucial parts of the rebellion, and now they were all gone, as was a large portion of the fleet which had either been destroyed in the battle over the Death Star or in the annihilation of Yavin 4. The Empire had won. Aboard the Death Star, Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader both received personal communications from the Emperor himself, voicing his pleasure at the destruction of the rebellion. Tarkin, who was unable to be promoted, was given a substantial bonus as thanks, and Vader was recalled to the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, where he and Palpatine could focus on their own secret Sith stuff without the interruption of the rebellion. The Emperor now stood unopposed in the galaxy. Mon Mothma, who had been sent off-planet during the battle, was now the sole survivor of the rebellion leadership. It had taken her decades to build it up to the point that it was, but now it was reduced to nothing. And on top of that, she was grieving the loss of many of the closest friends and fellow rebel leaders, Leia, John, and Hera, all of whom had died on Yavin. Bail Organa had been killed when the Death Star struck Alderaan, and Raddus, who had perished in the Battle of Scarif. Sure, there were still rebel cells scattered around, but after such a devastating defeat, they dared not try to organize into something bigger. Mon entered a dark period of her own, pretty much giving up any hope of rebelling against the Empire. For the next few years, the Empire really did rule with an iron fist. Word got around of what had happened at Yavin, and the citizens of the galaxy were petrified of getting on the wrong side of the Empire. It was no longer a secret that it was the Death Star that had fired upon both Jedha and Scarif, and even on low power, it had essentially destroyed both worlds. Similarly, Yavin 4 and Alderaan being completely wiped off of the map showed that the Empire was willing to do whatever it took to maintain control. Ironically, after the Battle of Yavin, the Death Star never fired again. The mere threat of it, and the notion of what terrible damage it could do, was enough to squash down any thought of a new rebellion rising. With the space station able to destroy any planetary body in the galaxy, and with the ruthlessly pragmatic Tarkin at the helm, the galactic citizens stayed in line and under the thumb. Combine that with Grand Admiral Thrawn being in charge of the Imperial Navy, and you can see that they were unstoppable. But hope was not completely lost, because on the distant and mysterious planet of Dagobah, Jedi Master Yoda got word of what had happened. While he had been hiding away on the swamp planet for over 20 years, that Jedi instinct had never left him. Yoda had tried to stay out of all that had happened in the galaxy since the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire, but one evening as he meditated, he communed with some old friends, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. They manifested from the spirit world of the Force and told Yoda about all that had happened, how both the son and daughter of Anakin Skywalker had been killed, how Palpatine and Vader had beaten the galaxy down, and how hope was fading, almost extinguished. Yoda, though reluctant, knew what he had to do. He called out, seeking any surviving Jedi, and miraculously, 2 answered. A Master and a Padawan, named Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger, respectively. Yoda helped train them and refine what they had learned in order to rebuild some kind of rebellion against the Empire. This was not the start of a new Jedi Order, but it was the spark of something bigger. Yoda, Kanan, and Ezra traveled off-world, searching for the rebel cells who had been scattered to each and every corner of the galaxy after the Battle of Yavin. Slowly but surely, people started to come out of the woodwork, and a handful of rebels soon turned into a small group, and then a large group, and it snowballed from there. But they had to be careful. There needed to be no hint of rebellion. Yoda and the rebels knew all too well what Palpatine was capable of, and how he would not only unleash the Death Star and the Imperial Navy on them if they were discovered, but more terrifyingly, Darth Vader. But there was one person missing from this new rebellion, Mon Mothma. She had remained alone, grieving all that she had lost. She had pretty much given up on life and resigned herself to existing in the shadows, living off of her former riches from her time as a senator and rebel leader. But one day she was visited by a young man she had not seen in a long time, Ezra Bridger. He was only a teen when they had last met, but Mon instantly recognized him. Ezra explained what was happening and how they were once again trying to start a rebellion. Mon scoffed at the idea, seeing it as futile, but the mention of Jedi Master Yoda made her ears prick up. She thought he was out of the battle and had probably died, so to hear that he was not only alive but willing to help gave her a little spark of hope within her own heart.
I'm looking for someone.
Looking?
The two of them hadn't been especially close during the days of the Republic, but they had known each other and were on friendly terms, so to see an old face such as his certainly made her smile. Sure, he might have been reaching 900 years old, but there was still a wise twinkle in his eye. As the two of them talked, Mon was reminded of the hope that she once held. Yoda too had lost everything: his home, his order, his friends, everything. Yet while he had gone into hiding, he never gave up on his religion. Being a Jedi meant too much to him, and it gave him strength in the face of danger. Mon realized she could learn something from that. Together, Mon Mothma, Yoda, Kanan, and Ezra worked in secret to unite fragmented rebel cells. Yoda urged patience, warning that rushing into direct confrontation with the Empire would only lead to disaster. He was right, it had happened at Yavin. Instead, they focused on small victories, sabotaging Imperial supply lines, rescuing prisoners, and rallying disillusioned planetary leaders to their cause. But what they didn't want to do was draw attention to themselves, so they worked quietly from the shadows, making attacks look like accidents.
The relay paid the price. Now you have got
Someone with whom she hadn't always seen eye to eye with when it came to how a rebellion should be run. Ezra, emboldened by Yoda's teachings, became a symbol of hope to a new generation of fighters. His optimism and connection to the Force inspired trust among those who feared the Empire's wrath. Kanan, meanwhile, trained a handful of Force-sensitive recruits in secret, teaching them to protect themselves while avoiding the Empire's watchful eye. However, Palpatine sensed something in the Force. He sensed Jedi training and growing, and this was something he could not stand for. The Empire deployed Darth Vader and his Inquisitors to seek down these Jedi. On more than one occasion, Yoda knew that he couldn't reveal himself, or the Emperor himself would deal with the matter personally. Instead, Kanan and Ezra formulated a plan to lead Vader and the Inquisitors away from the rebellion. Finally, on a desolate Outer Rim world, Kanan and Ezra confronted Vader. They had fought him before, and Vader had been a powerful foe, and despite all of their training, Kanan and Ezra were still struggling against him. They fought hard and bravely, and they knew that they couldn't run from this fight. If they did, Vader would keep coming for them. So this had to end in a decisive victory for one of the sides. Though the battle was hard fought, Kanan fell, being sliced by Vader's blade and his body ravaged by the Inquisitors. Ezra, though injured, managed to flee. Vader was not concerned with the younger Jedi, though. He was just happy to have killed the Master. While the loss of Kanan was devastating and Ezra's heart ached from the loss, he knew that they had bought time for Yoda, Mon, and the new rebellion to escape and find safety. Ezra carried his master's sacrifice as a solemn vow to continue the fight. The Emperor, who was in his throne room on the Death Star, which sat in orbit above Coruscant, was pleased to hear of Vader's victory. He had invited his apprentice, as well as several high-ranking Imperials, to a get-together in the throne room where they could strategize and generally pat each other on the back for how well the Empire was going. but several hours into the event, both Thrawn and Tarkin's comlinks went off. They answered them with frowns spreading across their faces. Tarkin asked the Sith, as well as the other Imperials and dignitaries, to join him at the large holoprojector which sat in the middle of the room. A hologram burst to life, that of Mon Mothma. This wasn't pre-recorded, this was live. She spoke directly at the Emperor, telling him that while the rebellion had been pushed to the point of breaking, their spirits still stood strong. She told him that in some distant location, far away from even Palpatine's senses,
as our allies in the Senate have hope of a peaceful...
Palpatine visibly flinched when Yoda's small form flickered to life next to Mon Mothma's. Rage filled his eyes, yet he remained silent. Vader too felt a surge of anger at the sight of Ezra. He should have killed the young Jedi when he had the chance. Mon, Yoda, and Ezra spoke about how they had sacrificed so much, but that they would not stop until the Sith were no more. The Death Star was destroyed, the Empire had fallen, and the galaxy was once again at peace. They spoke strongly and without fear of who they were addressing, and to stick the knife in even further, Yoda signed off with a simple, yet playfully threatening message. "See you soon, we will." The hologram disappeared and the room was silent, save for the low rumble that the Death Star always made. Tarkin, Thrawn, and the other high-ranking Imperials exchanged nervous glances before turning to their Emperor. Palpatine's eyes remained fixed on the holoprojector where Mon, Yoda, and Ezra had just been standing before he silently turned and he slowly walked away into a separate chamber, followed closely by Vader. The Emperor, Vader, Tarkin, Thrawn, and the entire Empire had suddenly been forced to pay attention. The battle was not over as they thought it was. Far from it. The Empire was monolithic and strong, and the Death Star was an unopposable and unstoppable weapon, but maybe, just maybe, this new rebellion with Jedi Master Yoda and Mon Mothma at the helm could bring back the spark of light to a galaxy that was shrouded in darkness. So now it's over to you. What did you think of this story? And how do you think the Empire winning the Battle of Yavin would have changed things in the Star Wars galaxy? We'd love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. If you haven't already, please give this video a like and a subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.